of good news to bring. Not sure if you heard about this, but the election that happened recently in Peru, the leftist candidate, or at least one of the leftist kind of progressive candidates in the race, Pedro Castillo, looks like he's going to win by a very slim margin. And it's pretty interesting how the elites in that country have tried to paint him, as well as these kind of corporate media sources outside of Peru as well. Pedro Castillo has been traveling the country, exhorting voters to get behind a call that has been particularly urgent during the devastating pandemic. No más pobres en un país rico. Apologize if I butchered that. Very well might have. No more poor people in a rich country. In the cliffhanger of an election with the huge urban-rural class divide, appears that the rural teacher, farmer, and union leader, I mean, that's pretty awesome considering the person who came in second in this race, her dad used to be the president, was a brutal dictator. So that's who Pedro Castillo is running up against. Is about to make history by defeating by less than 1% powerful right-wing candidate Keiko Fujimori, scion of the country's political Fujimori dynasty. Fujimori is challenging election results, alleging widespread fraud. The campaign has only presented evidence of isolated irregularities, and so far there's nothing to suggest a tainted vote. However, she can challenge some of the votes to delay the final results, and much like in the U.S., even an allegation of fraud by a losing candidate will cause certainty and raise tensions in the country. And obviously, Fujimori would be the candidate handpicked for sure by the U.S. empire, and they don't want to see Castillo come to power, obviously. Remarkable because he is a leftist teacher who is the son of illiterate peasants, and his campaign was grossly outspent by Fujimori. But there was a relentless propaganda attack against him that touched on historical fears of Peru's middle class and elites. Similar to what happened recently to progressive candidate Andres Arauz, who narrowly lost Ecuador's elections, but even more intense, Grupo El Comercio, a media conglomerate that controls 80% of Peru's newspapers, led the charge against Castillo. They accused him of being a terrorist with links to the Shining Path, a guerrilla group whose conflict with the state began in 1980 and 2002 led to tens of thousands of deaths and left the population traumatized. Let's see. And then, how they're they're trying to say, well, our currency is going to go to shit if we elect Pedro Castillo. That image is pretty clear to say dollar subri. I'm not sure what that one means exactly. Comment down below if you do. On the economic front, Castillo has been accused of being a communist. Oh no, goddamn communist. Who wants to nationalize key industries and would turn Peru into a cruel dictatorship like Venezuela. Billboards along Lima's main highway ask the population, would you like to live in Cuba or Venezuela? I'm assuming probably some of those people would like to live, especially in Cuba. Their healthcare system is amazing. Just look at how they handled the fucking pandemic. Fuck. Linked his campaign to the devaluation of the Peruvian currency. Fujimori was treated with kid gloves by the media during the campaign, with one of the newspapers in the above pictures claiming that Kiko guarantees work, food, health, and immediate reactivation of the economy. So basically just parodying whatever Fujimori was saying while, being very critical and reactionary to the Castillo campaign. So obviously it's very clear where the corporate media, who they want to win, Fujimori. Her past as a first lady during her father Alberto Fujimori's, would it be first lady though? Because that's usually like the wife partner. Brutal role and largely ignored by corporate media. She's been able to claim that Fujimori Fujimorismo defeated terrorism without being challenged on the horrors that Fujimorismo inflict on the country, including the forced sterilization of over 270,000 women and 22,000 men, for which your father is on trial. Jesus, I mean, and this is who the corporate media in Peru is treating with kid gloves. It seems like in the Western media as well. He's currently in jail over other human rights abuses and corruption, though Kiko promised to free him if she would. I mean, Jesus Christ. Thank God that Castillo is leading this election. Sounds like just as much of a fucking nut job as her father. Also ignored was the fact that Kiko herself is out on bail as of last year, pending a money laundering investigation, and without presidential immunity, she will probably end up in prison. Oh man, this is who the elites in Peru and outside of it want to lead the country. I mean, Jesus Christ. Obviously, you know, if she becomes president, it's going to be disastrous for the poor, the working class, the most vulnerable, marginalized, indigenous folks, etc. in Peru. But it's going to be, you know, really good for the elites, for the multinational corporations. And obviously that's why the corporate media in and outside of Peru is, you know, parroting that she's going to do all these great things. International media was no different in its unbalanced coverage of Castillo and Fujimori, with Bloomberg warning that elites tremble at the thought of Castillo as president. The Financial Times headline screaming, Peru's elite in panic at the prospect of hard left victory in president. And again, he's not really. He said he's not a communist. He actually doesn't even want to nationalize these corporations, these industries, which, I mean, I think he should. Maybe once he gets in office, he'll do that. He didn't want to seem like too extreme, but we'll see. Let's see. One of Castillo's key campaigns. Key campaign platforms is to invoke a constitutional referendum to let the people decide whether they want a new constitution or wish to keep the current one written in 93 under the regime of Alberto Fujimori, which entrenched neoliberalism into its framework, i.e. privatization, deregulation, that type of shit. Current constitution prioritizes private interest over public interest, profit over life and dignity. Oh, the fucking U.S. government is, I'm sure, plotting ways to overthrow this guy. Reads his plan of government. Castillo proposes that a new constitution include the following: recognition and guarantee for the rights to health, education, food, housing, internet access, recognition for indigenous peoples improves cultural diversity, recognition of the rights of nature, redesign of the state to focus on transparency and citizens' participation, and a key role for the state in strategic planning ensure that the public interest takes precedence. I mean, it all makes sense and sounds really good, and obviously benefit the working class people of Peru disproportionately. This type of platform, if enacted, obviously not going to be good for the interests of the multinational corporations necessarily, or the elites in or outside of Peru, and that's why he's being painted in such a negative light by these corporate media influences in and outside of the country. I mean, Jesus Christ, that how literally, if you're actually being reasonable and logical, how could you argue against anything in that platform? I mean, it's very centered on what's best for the people, what's best for the planet. And again, what's best for people is what's best for the planet, and vice versa. And then the foreign policy, Castillo's victory will represent a huge blow to the U.S. interests in the region, an important step towards reactivating Latin America integration. He has promised to withdraw Peru from the Lima Group, an ad hoc committee of countries dedicated to regime change in Venezuela. Fuck yeah, that's awesome. And I saw a thing where Evo Morales, the former president of Bolivia, was congratulating Pedro Castillo on this, which is, you know, cool to see. If Evo Morales sees you in a good light, you're probably good, you know. In addition, the Peru Libre Party has called for expelling USAID. Yes, fuck yeah. And for the closure of U.S. military bases in the country. Yes, fuck yeah. Castillo has also expressed support for countering the OAS, Organization of American States, which was more or less controlled by the U.S., and strengthening both the community of Latin America and Caribbean states and the Union of South American nations. The victory is also a good omen for the left in Chile, Colombia, and Brazil, each of which will have presidential elections over the next year and a half. Hopefully, Lula da Silva will become president once again in Brazil. I'm not sure who the preferred candidates in Chile or Colombia would be. Hostile Biden, man. Again, Trump administration wouldn't have been any fan of a Castillo admin, and neither is Biden. Again, I don't see a whole lot of substantive difference between the Trump administration's foreign policy and Biden's, and you know, that's, I wasn't under any illusions that shit would change. It's still obviously really, you know, disgusting nonetheless. But this is some good news, though. It's always important to try to highlight, you know, these good things when they pop up, because it can seem like it can be few and far between sometimes. Peace, much love, all part of the people. Subscribe for more content.